Today's big question here on Morning Kick Round: what can MLS do to become an appealing TV product? We bring this up because Jimmy Haslam, owner of Columbus Crew, in a recent interview says that MLS has got a long way to go to get people watching their product, MLS, on television.
I think context is important here when we talk about who Jimmy Haslam is. I mean, I think most in the know soccer fans understand what the dynamic here is. But of course, Jimmy Haslam and his wife bought the Columbus Crew from Anthony Precourt when we had the whole Save the Crew crisis, when Precourt wanted to move the team to Austin and all that happened. Of course, Jimmy Haslam is also the owner of the Cleveland Browns of the NFL. Now, this led to that whole playing a game between the Crew and Inter Miami in the Cleveland Browns stadium, which upset some people, is tied to the shared interest that the Haslams have in both kinds of football. So Jimmy Haslam he's not a soccer guy. Now, I don't mean that he doesn't like the game. I have no idea how much he cares about the sport. I don't know that he is, I don't know if he is somebody who understands how good Thierry Henry was, for example, right? I don't know. He could be really into it, Rob. He could be blocking off days to watch the Champions League and stuff. But my sense is that's probably not the case. That the NFL is really his main interest. And then the soccer thing, okay, it's down the road in Columbus. I'll get involved in that. And obviously they get to be saviors. And of course, they built the stadium that has helped turn the Crew into one of the more predominant or preeminent teams in Major League Soccer. But he's not like that. That being said, the business side of it, maybe he's got a clearer image of this. So what he said, it's in this article over at Sports Business Journal. Haslam Sports Group co-chair Jimmy Haslam, who owns the Crew, told attendees at Leaders Week in London that MLS, quote, has a long way to go in getting people to watch our product on TV. Now, he said that was because the league struggles to cultivate an at-home audience to the quality of play, saying MLS must, quote, put a better product on the field in the United States if we're really going to be serious about getting people to watch our product. How many times does he say the word product? Multiple times. Lots of times. I don't love that word in this context, but is he right, Rob? Is he right?
Well, you go to MLS cities, and I think the attention on MLS cities where people can go in person is very different from anywhere outside of those cities. From a place with no Major League Soccer team, it does not hit the radar, and no one comes to the bar and say, did you check out that MLS soccer game last night? It's not really on the radar if you're not in one of those cities. And I know the random stumble upon, like, oh, it's on a late night game on Fox or ESPN or anything like that. That just doesn't happen anymore. Now that it's on Apple. Like, you have to be very dedicated fan to seek it out. Even if you go to the Apple app, you have to go through a couple different layers to get there. There's no accidental discovery of it. There's no casual viewership. You got to be very intentional to find it.
They do push it sometimes. You can be watching something on Apple that is not MLS, and you'll get that little pop-up in the corner that says, there's a tight game between so-and-so and so-and-so. Okay. Push this button to watch the game. Yeah, you get pop-up ads, basically, for what's happening in the moment on MLS when you watch things on your Apple TV. Now, again, I don't know if that is enough, and maybe that's not everybody's getting that. If we're talking about the product, the quality of the game is what he's talking. The quality of the players is what he's talking about, right? Now, I don't think that's not a factor in getting people to watch Major League Soccer. I think the quality of the sport should always be there. Should always be a goal to improve it, right? And of course, for years and years and years, those of us who covered the league as part of our job would say MLS needs to do better investing in the quality of play. Yeah, you can bring in a couple of DPs and you can spend money a little bit here or there. You can incentivize clubs to spend money on South American young players to bring. But what you need to do is allow the clubs that want to be ambitious to spend across their entire rosters in ways that will improve the quality of the game, because you've got 20 players that are at a high level rather than 5 or 6 or 7. Right? That imbalance across the entirety of an MLS roster is part of the problem for the quality. Right? The MLS and pure dollars, some of those teams might spend more than the Mexican clubs that we're often comparing them to. But what the Mexican clubs can do is they can spend $10 million on all of their players, regardless of where they come from. They're not restricted in, although this player is a certain category and that other player is a different category. They have foreign player rules like everybody, every country does. But beyond that, they're not limited. Where an MLS team has to go, well, this is that guy a TAM player? What kind of contract is he on? I mean, what kind of category does he fit? Well, we can't sign another high quality player because we don't have room and we don't have that budget designation, right? Now, that doesn't to me, those things are worthwhile doing them because you want to compete and win trophies, and obviously you want to allow for ambitious owners to spend the kind of money they want to spend. But I don't see it as the factor in getting people to watch the game on television, because there will always be some soccer on television that is better than Major League Soccer. That's a reality.
Yeah, that's a very harsh reality.
There's always going to be a game somewhere in the world, especially in Europe, that is of higher quality. And generally speaking, MLS is also going to lose out in terms of the pageantry and the history, especially when we're talking about the Premier League. Even if you go down to Argentina, certainly you talk about Mexico, Germany, these leagues have things that MLS cannot have based on how old the league is and how important it is in this country. So I don't know that I buy this necessarily as the cure-all, but it's worth doing to improve the quality of the league. Is absolutely worth doing, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, you want to see some sort of ambition coming out, just like we may not agree with everything that USL is doing, but they're pushing the envelope and trying to expand, change the status quo that has been. From this article with covering this interview with Jimmy Haslam in the Sports Business Journal, there's another quote that I thought was pretty interesting, talking about MLS needing to evolve, and they asked him the question about promotion relegation. He says, do we ever get there? I'm not sure. We're going to have to change some things up. I don't know whether MLS is 10th or 12th, but it's not amongst the world's top leagues. And if we want it to go, I'll make up a number to 5 or 6. We're going to have to do something different. Could promotion relegation be a possibility? It could. And wow, what a tease there at the end of that quote.
I think that he's not the first MLS owner or the first MLS figure to say maybe Pro-rel could be a thing without actually committing to anything. And remember, he's one guy among 30 owners right now. So he has one vote, or his soccer officer who goes to the meetings, they have one vote as a club. So I don't know that this really means anything, but that's what the chat is talking about. You know, the part of the reason that MLS suffers isn't necessarily the quality of the soccer. I think the quality of soccer of Major League Soccer is actually pretty damn good when you compare it to a lot of things you can find. Is it better than the Premier League? No. Is it better than the Champions League? Of course not. It's depending on the clubs and the matchups you're talking about. But is it better than a lot of the soccer that's out there? Yeah. But people turn their nose up at it. Number one, because it's American, which, okay, whatever. You know, that bothers me, but I kind of get it. But number two, again, because it feels like a lot of those games in a 34-game regular season with 30 teams don't matter for much, right? We're right now, you know, you get down to the end of the season, Rob, and you kind of get into this place of like generating excitement for this circumstance that maybe isn't commensurate with what actually is going on when you look at the table. We congratulate the Chicago Fire on making the MLS Cup playoffs. We did that because they beat Inter Miami at Soldier Field and they made the playoffs, and they're in eighth place. They're in eighth place,
eighth
right
or ninth,
now? Yeah. And the best they can probably do is something like sixth or seventh if you look at the math. So we're saying here, congratulations to a sixth place team.
You bait it over mediocrity.
What are we talking about there? Now, I'm not one who says get rid of playoffs. I like the playoffs. I'm a playoffs guy. But 9 teams is too many teams to put in the playoffs. You are justifying being mediocre by saying, hey, as long as you get in the 7th place. And remember, last year, the New York Red Bulls made an MLS Cup final. Last year, Atlanta United knocked off the top team in the league in the first round proper of the playoffs. Those things, well, look, Inter Miami should have done better, and I don't blame, it's not like I'm saying like Atlanta United shouldn't have had that opportunity. I am saying they shouldn't have had that opportunity. I definitely put blame in that situation on Inter Miami. I don't absolve them because 9 teams made the playoffs. But we should not be doing this, right? We should not be doing a season where it takes a long time, all the way down to the last couple of weeks before you're like, the games really matter now. Like the game should feel bigger when they're happening in June and July and August.
Yeah, there's been games playing for 6-8 months now, and it's only just getting important. That's pretty wild. I mean, you can go to games in July. They could go on a 3-game, 4-game losing streak. And, is the season totally kaputs after doing that? But those things aside, I've been feeling lately, especially with Honsun Min, not Honmin Sun, rather, at LAFC. I was thinking Major League Soccer is probably doing the least with the most that they've ever had right now, because they've got some, 30 teams, obviously a huge league. Arguably, the quality and the play is the best it's been. I mean, I'm sure people could debate that. But with it being on Apple and the way it is and so many other things available, I think there's getting the least out of the most they've ever had. And to Haslam's point is something's got to give.
Well, I don't know that. How do you measure that, Rob? Like,
Doing
I'm
the
not
least with the
saying,
most?
yeah. How do you measure that?
Well, I mean, the 30 teams, obviously there's the most games they've ever had. So there's a capacity there. There's not necessarily a capacity, a volume there, a quantity there that they've ever had. But there's also, there's more DP level players than I think there's ever been. The mid-level players
Well, okay,
are better than they've ever
okay.
been.
I would argue, but okay. And again, this is not to let the league off the hook. There are things that should be happening to make the league better, and I think they do shoot themselves in the foot more often than not. But from an attendance perspective, MLS is doing fine.
Yeah.
Could it be better in some cases? Of course, but bad teams are going to struggle to draw. So that's always going to be a fact of life. I mean, we live in this world where we judge MLS by the standards of the Premier League, where teams at the bottom of the table are putting 20,000 in their stadium or 25,000 in their stadium every week, because that's what you do on a Saturday. Because when you live in Brighton or Bournemouth or whatever, it's part of your life to go, right? The NFL, and there are teams that don't do well. I know there are empty seats in some places. Here in DC for years, the Washington football team couldn't draw a full house. But it's a giant stadium. But NFL stadiums, even for poor teams, are filled every weekend. Why? Because the people care about the team that deeply. So those are the connections really here that are going to push MLS forward. Now, are they doing enough to forge those connections? Absolutely, that's a question we should ask. We should be asking them, hey, are you doing enough to make the games feel important so that people who are not necessarily already in your bubble are paying attention to care about this? But I definitely think that MLS is maybe not always, and maybe not in every market, as you pointed out, but in most places that it has chosen to put its teams, it is always going to come up against that problem of being a second or third thought in a sporting context. So again, how do you overcome that without just always being subculture? And if you're always subculture, then the most important, the people who care about you most are going to the games. And when they're not able to go to a game, maybe they're watching at home, but that's a small TV audience. To come all the way back to what Jimmy Haslam was saying, how do you make the product matter more on television to a national audience? I don't know the answer to that, because I don't know if the world is still in a place where that is possible, the way, say, the NFL has figured out how to do that.
Yeah, football, NFL, and college-wise, that's ingrained into people. Even people who have no interest in athletics know reasonably what's going on to a degree. And there's traditions that are baked into those communities or families and otherwise. And like you said, it's subculture. So the niche people, the people that are interested, care about it, but it doesn't have that cultural spread.
Here's a measure, right? So Simply Dope has just said the Carolina Panthers sell out because of who they're playing, right? Because they're not getting, and there are certainly, again, individual circumstances in certain cities in the NFL where the hometown team's not driving the attendance, right? Whether they're too new or whatever. Okay, so Simply Dope's got a good point there. But here's a measure of it. How many people, so if an NFL team is bad, people might not want to go to the games, and that team might not sell out, right? That's a thing that can happen. But there are thousands upon thousands of people in that given town who are angry that the team is not bad, and that's why they're not going. It's not maybe they're not actively protesting the team or boycotting the team, but effectively that's what they're doing, right? They're saying with their lack of attendance or lack of interest of going to the games that they're upset about the way the team is playing. And they will call sports talk radio, and they will go on message boards, and they will put it out on X how angry they are about the way the team is playing and being run. Does that happen in MLS?
I think it does
in
certain
big
pockets.
numbers, in big numbers, in the kind of numbers the NFL gets. People, when the team is bad in the NFL, people are angry about it, and there's a noise level that comes with that. When MLS teams are bad, aren't they just kind of like off the radar in most places? Isn't it just kind of like, whatever? Now, there's always a small hardcore group of fans who care very much. I'm not saying there's not. I'm not saying nobody cares, but the city doesn't care. It doesn't bother the city that the MLS team is bad. And that's something MLS has yet to figure out how to get to. And again, can they do it in the traditional way, which is maybe spend more money on the product? Is Jimmy? I don't know the answer to those questions.
And I think you're talking about the noise level. I also think that the fragmentation of social media has prevented any sort of, overwhelming noise to come from it. Like what platform would you go right now if you want to
No.
check in on the latest MLS drama?
And look, the fracturing of our attention, the fact that we no longer have a sort of even local monoculture around our sports teams, right? The reason that the NFL is still central to so many of these cities is because it existed for so long and became that before we got to a place where everybody can go off and follow their own interest, right? There's an awareness thing that is missing for MLS that they may never get because they exist in a world where you don't have to pay attention. But if you grow up in Pittsburgh, even if you don't care a lick about the NFL, you absolutely know who the Steelers are, right? You know how important the Steelers are to the city of Pittsburgh, right? But if you grow up in an MLS city, or especially even now, even as a young person, where MLS is ubiquitous and accepted as part of the furniture of sports, you might not even know about what's going on with the MLS team because people don't talk. You don't walk into the grocery store and hear two people having a conversation about the MLS team as much as you might the NFL team.
This next thing might cause us to go long, but what do you think about Chris's comment here? He's saying that these MLS clubs aren't representing the cities where they play. Do you think that that's cynical, or is that a legitimate claim?
I mean, look, I think soccer has a different feeling, in part because in this country it has to operate on a lower level, right? The biggest soccer stadium we have, the actual soccer stadium, not an NFL stadium that an MLS team plays in, but the actual biggest soccer stadium in the country is 30,000 in Nashville, right? So we are talking about a different level of buy-in from soccer fans. MLS teams aren't saying, well, if we're not getting 70,000, right? Okay. So that because MLS operates on that level, it feels, and because we take our cues from European soccer and South American soccer and some of these other places, we very much emphasize the community aspect of a soccer club, right? The romantic ideal of a soccer club is a bunch of guys get together and launch a team, and then eventually you go up the ladder and all that stuff. And we're not at that place in America, but we certainly dream about it. And so what you want is a team that represents. I mean, I don't know that it's always ideal, Rob, but how much do we talk about these football grounds that are in the neighborhood, right? And right next door, there's some lady sweeping her porch or whatever and making a meat pie, and then she can hear the crowd when they cheer the goal for the local team, right? We romanticize that stuff. And so we think about soccer as needing to fit that void. And as American soccer fans, not all of us, but many of us want that. So when a team does do what Chris is talking about and decides to play outside of the market they claim to represent, and sometimes that is circumstance, right? Sometimes it's just where can you build a stadium? Like where can you get your roots in the ground? I don't know, man. That one's a tough one for me because we don't have in other American sports, we don't really have that sense that it's necessary the same way. You can be a little dislocated and still represent the town that's on the back of your shirt or whatever in a way that you can't do in other sports. I don't know. I mean, I haven't had a chance to read it, but I know there's a story out there on the Guardian right now about West Ham losing its identity because it left their stadium. Where did West
Bowling
Ham play?
ground,
The bowling ground.
which
They
was
left the
actually a way bigger stadium. That's like a 40,000-50,000 stadium.
they left the bowling ground to go play in the Olympic Stadium because they thought that was going to level them up as a club. And what has happened is they've lost their identity. So I sympathize with that. I just don't know if we have the same sort of foundational stuff around soccer that kind of makes it that important of a story.
Andy's comment earlier was talking about give it a century, and who knows, both culturally and just like development wise, maybe it does, just take 100 years of doing the thing of playing the soccers to get to that point. Maybe that urban sprawl stadium gets surrounded and becomes part of a neighborhood, and that is part
I
of that
mean,
romantic. My
that's the
parents lived
thing,
down the
man.
street from the Coventry Stadium. They had that embedded in their lives, just like in Hamtramck with Detroit City FC. That is in a neighborhood, and people really like that stuff. You have like the
Yeah.
old lady
I
sweeping
mean, look,
their porch, and then people peeking
again,
over the wall to get a free game.
we are absolutely people who are like, oh, an MLS team's gonna build a stadium. I hope they build it downtown. I hope they build it downtown. I hope they build it in a vibrant area. No, downtown, that's always where people live, but we hope they build it in a vibrant area, whatever. And if you end up with a team that is so, for example, we talk a lot about the Fire leaving Bridgeview because it wasn't working, because it was too far away from anything of note in Chicago, right? We talk about how the Rapids play in Commerce City, and that is sort of out from Denver, and it's not. And now there's a new team. The NWSL team is going to come into Denver and capture attention. People are like, oh, maybe a USL team could go into Denver because the Rapids aren't maximizing that market. We talk about Dallas a lot because they play 30 miles north of the city, and we've got this new team going into the Cotton Bowl and all those things. In a lot of those cases, those teams got what they could get, right? The only option they had at the time when they wanted to build a soccer stadium and not play in an NFL or college football stadium anymore, that was not a good fit for them in their game, which made the game look terrible and affected the quality of the game, was to build a stadium in the exurbs. I mean, can beggars be choosers here, right? Like Chester, Pennsylvania. Again, I mentioned it, birthplace of my grandfather. It is not in Philly. It is not in Philly, and Mike knows this, and Pablo knows this. It is not in Philly. It is way out from Philly, and they've made it work for them to a large extent. Like, would it be better if they were playing the Stadium District with all the other Philly teams? Of course, it would be better. I don't know. Again, like, is that the real major barrier here to what we're talking about? I don't know. It's and look, we'll see what happens if the Fire get their stadium built in Chicago. How that impacts the popularity of the team in the city of Chicago. Because right now, that's a team with big ambitions that doesn't really seem to have a foundational fan base to fill up a 25,000 seat stadium even, and they're playing in a football venue right now. So those are difficult questions because what we imagine should be happening is very far away from reality.
Yeah, time will tell. Curious to see if Jimmy Haslam, Columbus Crew owner's comments are just that, or a sign of big changes to come to Major League Soccer to making it a viable, big audience TV draw. But thank you, everyone, for getting in the comments. Great show today. Thank you to our guest from Memphis, Tennessee. Great stuff. Great to dot the map. Thanks to the viewers overseas. Wing. Thanks for tuning in from a long way away. Someone mentioned we hit a high number of live viewers, so great to see the growth there. And if you want to contribute to that growth, hit the subscribe button or step it up a notch, $3.99 a month. Become an MK Ultra. Get the perks of priority commenting on these live streams, early access to videos, bonus content, and access to the Morning Kick Around Discord server.
Behind the scenes information about what's coming down the line, and we got some exciting stuff. We're working on some things I'm really excited about. So if you want to know what's coming before it happens, if you want to be in the know, become an MK Ultra, become a member.
All right, guys, lots of soccer over the weekend, and we'll try to touch on all of it when we come back for our live episode on Monday morning. And until then, everybody, enjoy your soccer.